Tengen wasn't always a mysterious, thumb-shaped ancient sorcerer. At one point, Master Tengen was actually a woman, and has now just evolved beyond gender and humanity entirely. Of course, that wouldn't have happened had Toji not taken his role as the sorcerer killer so seriously. Regardless, that didn't change the fact that Tengen is basically the entire reason that both Jujutsu campuses are safe enough for students to attend, and that the cursed objects aren't pillaged more than they already have been, like by Mahito during the sister school exchange. But let's rewind and go back to Tengen's somewhat humble beginnings. This immortal started as something of a spokesperson during the Nara period for Jujutsu Society, and the positives it could bring. This means Tengen has been alive and active since the 700s. And let's not forget that they were strictly human back then. Their teachings eventually led to the followers worshipping Tengen as a god, and taking their word as gospel. Later on, Tengen was nicknamed Star, and inspired groups like the Star Religious Group to form. With the immortal status growing and years passing, Tengen became almost a mythical figure that most couldn't meet or ever lay eyes on. Only the highest ranked in the Jujutsu world even got the privilege. As I mentioned, after the 2006 vessel to keep Tengen's humanity intact was taken out by Toji, they began to evolve. Before this, Tengen had successfully merged with vessels every 500 years, and as far as we know, they were all female, at least according to the two have been presented so far. Perhaps Tengen needs to assimilate another woman because it matches genetically better? But that hiccup didn't change the fact that Tengen remained one of the top barrier users in the world. Speaking of which, since Tengen keeps both Jujutsu schools fully protected and guards all the important weapons, they aren't much of a fighter. In fact, they don't really fight at all. Kenjaku even told his allies not to worry about facing Tengen whenever they made it through the barrier, since the immortal is basically a non-issue. But let's go over what Tengen can actually do. The techniques Tengen can create involve modifying entire spaces, hiding their body, or providing support to other allies. Besides keeping the students protected, Tengen also aids the outside barriers of managers to make them stronger. Think of people like Ichiji, who we've seen raise veils on missions. Tengen also creates distortions or confusion with their barriers, and even keep their physical form trapped within one if needed. As far as we know, every decision Tengen makes with their techniques is a means to keep Jujutsu Society and the rest of the world safe for another day. If you consider that most Jujutsu techniques follow the user's personality and individuality, it makes sense that someone spreading the word about abilities to defend and protect while also living forever would be more on the pacifist side, right? The same way it makes sense for someone as boisterous and extroverted as Todo to have a technique that involves clapping. But anyway, I'm sure you're wondering what exactly happened to Tengen after losing part of their humanity and the star plasma vessel they were going to absorb. Tengen has changed a lot in the past 11 years and doesn't really look like anything we know to be human. And it makes sense since they're no longer a person, but part of a different group now. Tengen actually describes themselves as being able to merge with the world if they wanted. But after a bloody and unpredictable battle between the Jujutsu sorcerers and special grade curses, Tengen has no choice but to show themselves. Okay, they don't really reveal their body at first, but eventually Tengen comes out of hiding within the barrier to greet the good guys. Do you blame an immortal, super wise character for being cautious as to who is working for Kenjaku? So the group who comes to greet Tengen includes Yuji, Megumi, Yuki, Maki, Yuta, and Choso. They hatch a plan together within the Tomb of the Star Corridor. That's a place that Tengen is purposely confining themselves to via a strong barrier so that Kenjaku can't force a merge with all the people of the world, creating a hive mind which could be swayed to evil by a single person. Tengen lets them know that Kenjaku is actually another ancient sorcerer who has been body hopping for centuries. He took over the infamous Noritoshi Kamo and is now using Suguru Geto's body after he died. For a long time, Kenjaku has been planning to force Tengen to merge with the world and force a fate on everyone. But for centuries, a user of the Six Eyes, which can stop Kenjaku, and star plasma vessels were around to keep that from happening. Unfortunately, when someone with a heavenly restriction as powerful as Toji's came around, all bets were off. Everything started to fall apart for Tengen, and pieces started to fit together for Kenjaku, including the Prism Realm he wanted to use against Gojo. On the plus side, Tengen offers the group a way to unseal Gojo and quickly finish the culling game without too much loss. But it turns out that most of the items they would need are missing or destroyed. But Tengen's vast knowledge doesn't end there. They also tell them about Angel, another ancient sorcerer. So we don't have enough already that can help with the whole Gojo problem. As it happens, Angel can extinguish curse techniques, and Tengen even knows where to find them. With Kenjaku's plan moving forward and the culling game right around the corner, Tengen asks the group to spare 2 people for their protection. They end up with Yuki and Choso, 2 very strong individuals. Eventually, they all leave with Tengen and their 2 guards staying behind, just waiting for Kenjaku or someone he works with to show up and wreak havoc. Interestingly, Yuki was a past potential vessel for Tengen and doesn't have any connection to the Jujutsu schools. And likewise, Choso is a cursed womb painting, who is basically somewhere between human and a curse, with no attachment to Jujutsu society. It's odd, but almost feels inevitable that 2 such special grade outliers would be the ones to watch over Tengen, another entity outside of normal Jujutsu society. That aside, Tengen reveals that multiple people can act as vessels at one time, but usually the one with the most potential is chosen. This means that 12 years ago, even after losing Riko as a vessel, Tengen could have still merged with someone else, but chose not to. According to Tengen, the assimilation process could still eventually lead to their evolution, so Tengen decided to just accept Riko's loss, which is why they use barriers to protect their body instead. What's more, is Yuki can hear the previous vessels and refuses to let Tengen know what they're saying. She could also have confirmed whether they were all women for us too. And of course, during this heart-to-heart is when Kenjaku shows up to try and force Tengen to merge with all of Japan's population. Choso, technically created by this evil sorcerer, is the first to confront him. What makes this situation worse is when you realize Kenjaku's reasoning for this is all about seeing what would happen if something with that many people's amount of curse energy was made into one being. He literally compares his experiment to being a kid doodling on some blank paper. Think about it. No big endgame goal, no evil master plan to take over the world, just pure creation, with a forced battle royale to boot. This kind of proves that age doesn't necessarily make you wise. It could just make you seem more deranged and run out of things to entertain yourself with. As Choso struggles against his deadbeat father Kenjaku, when he manages to get the old sorcerer to use more than just curse manipulation, that's when Yuki steps into the fight. When Kenjaku misreads the situation, calling out his domain expansion, Womb Profusion, that's when Tengen's part of the plan starts. The idea was to cancel out Kenjaku's domain by surrounding it with Tengen's ability to create empty barriers and have them analyze Kenjaku's domain to dispel it. That way, once Tengen got control of the barrier, as long as Kenjaku was inside, the Immortal would have the upper hand. All they need is 10 seconds to get there. Tengen struggles to find the outer layer though, especially since Kenjaku has copied Sukuna's way of both opening a domain and keeping a technique active at the same time. Meanwhile, Yuki is trying her best to fight while not opening her domain as part of the plan, but even a simple domain is stripped away like paper and she's heavily injured. On the plus side, Tengen does manage to get rid of Kenjaku's domain, but at the cost of Yuki's body. Thankfully, Choso is still around to fight and joins in, as Garuda buys Yuki some time for him to show up again. It almost seems like it's going well, when Kenjaku creates a tiny Uzumaki aimed at Yuki's abdomen at point-blank range. As a reminder, this is an attack using very powerful and dense cursed energy and comes from Suguru Geto's body. Before this confrontation, the Immortal was paying close attention to Choso's behavior and his shifting relationship with his own humanity. In a way, he's become more human than Tengen through bonding with Yuji and the other Jujutsu users. Seeing the situation and likely realizing what the outcome will be, Tengen makes a decision. With Yuki's help, Tengen opens their barrier to allow Choso to escape, after Yuki tells him to live as a human rather than a curse. Having lived so long and ended young vessels' lives to prevent their evolution, it seems as if this time Tengen wants to help someone live instead. As he's forced out, Kenjaku comes face to face with Tengen's evolved form, surprisingly comparing it to Sukuna's form back when he was alive. Whether that hints to there being an overlapping plot point that will come into play, or if it's only for a visual comparison, it isn't clear yet. Before Yuki dies, she increases her mass through her curse technique, Star Rage, to the point of creating a black hole to destroy Kenjaku. I mean, come on, anyone would have had a problem countering a black hole, right? Unfortunately, Kenjaku survives thanks to the multiple people's curse techniques he's accumulated to this point, and a lucky gamble. And the evil sorcerer even gets through Tengen's high-level barrier control and finds the immortal's true body, so he can use it for his nefarious experiment. You know, the one that could even cause a massive city-sized Uzumaki. There's a brief moment between them. As he looks on at Tengen's evolved body, we might even say he sounds fond or nostalgic. Does this mean, regardless of his attachment to anyone or anything, that Kenjaku's curiosity for knowledge or what comes from his research will always be a higher priority? Maybe. Or this moment might be pivotal for the future of the Jujutsu world and will bring about change in a good way. It might seem like the end of Tengen, but even Geto made a comeback during the Shibuya arc, however brief. So anything's possible. That's pretty much it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think about Tengen in the comments. And if you like the video, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.